Hello, my name is Earl Mallory. I go by the road name Huck. I am with an organization called Bikers Against Trafficking. Bikers Against Trafficking is an organization that started back in 2016, the beginning of 2016, by two people, Doc and Rainey. They are licensed psychologists and both had a history of trafficking in their own lives. Back then, they noticed that there was a lot of organizations out there that dealt with awareness, which is an awesome thing. But there was really nobody who was hands-on. They had people that they found that were in the life, as they call it, that were being trafficked, that had nowhere to turn. There was nobody that they could get to help them. All these organizations that were raising funds didn't have funds for that. So their heart and their passion being to help those who have been trafficked. They were also motorcycle enthusiasts, love to ride, and so they thought they'd put the two together, which was a great idea because of the fact that motorcyclists are out there. They run the roads, they're out there, they ride, they go to places that most people may not want to go to, and so they see things. And the majority of bikers are probably the most giving people that I know, willing to help wherever they can, and so that organization began in that way. I came to know about it a couple of years later. It was the beginning of 2018. My wife and I had always donated to organizations that fought trafficking overseas. There's one called the International Justice Mission, and we gave money every month, which is kind of an easy thing to do if you have the money, just to write a check, put it in the envelope, and send it away, hoping that it's going to do what you hope it to do. Then one day I was in the local supermarket and I was walking through and a gentleman walked by me and he was wearing a shirt and it was the logo of Bikers Against Trafficking, which also has the website on it, bikersagainsttrafficking.org. And I thought that was an interesting concept. So when we went home, I looked it up and found out that not only was it something that our hearts, my wife and I's hearts were serious about, but it was also local. And that they were actually hands-on, what I call boots on the ground. So we checked it out. We sent an email to the founder, to Doc, and he said, if you're interested in looking into it, come check us out. And so we went to the first event and saw what they were doing, and it was an awareness thing, which we have to do, but it was eye-opening because you're getting to know more about the trade, the business side of what it's about, the people who are affected. You get to meet people who have faced what I can't even imagine to be the horror that they've been through, but you meet people who've been through it. And my wife and I felt that this was a way that we could actually see our efforts hopefully do some good, hopefully make a difference. And so we joined in the spring of 2018. And we've been with them ever since. It's become our passion. It's what we do on our time off. We are out there. We both ride. We are very much involved in the motorcycle world. It's a lifestyle for us. And we try to reach people in a way to educate them, to get them to look for things, to then, if they see things that don't look right, to then make a call. That's really our efforts. And when they make that call, then we go into action. We work with all ages. We work with anybody who is being trafficked by anybody. We work with people who are no longer trafficked, but used to be. Through Doc and Rainey's therapy, they provide pro bono therapy for both addiction and for trauma to anybody who's been trafficked. And it doesn't matter if you're currently being trafficked or have been trafficked in the past, we provide that service. And what we find is that a lot of times that when we're out there and we're doing what we're doing, we have people come to us and in talking to us realize that they have a past with trafficking that they did not understand or realize that it was actually trafficking. So we're bringing the information not only to make people aware, but also to help people figure out why they struggle with some of the things they struggle with. One of the biggest challenges is getting people to open their eyes. It's an ugly topic. Nobody wants to know about it because they may have to do something about it. And this is a world where a lot of the people that you see that are being trafficked are people that may be the unsavory types, what we would call the invisible people, people that walk the streets, people that are drug addicts, people who are, they look dangerous. They look like people that you would avoid. That being the case, people don't want to have to maybe get their hands dirty. And I'm not saying that's everybody. There's a lot of great people who want to help. But this is, like I say, it's a hard topic. There are churches that won't let us go and talk to them because it's too dark and it's something that they think may bother or hurt their congregations, which I don't understand. But what I thought I would do is to kind of enlighten you on some of the things about what Bikers Against Trafficking does, some of the statistics, just to give you an understanding of what we know and what you should know, so we can try to make an effort to stop what's going on out there. This is a topic that's becoming more and more in the light. Thankfully, there's a movie out now that just came out, Sound of Freedom. This is a good movie to open your eyes. It doesn't cover the whole picture. I liked the movie and I recommend it. I think it was a movie that was worth making. It took them 5 years to get this movie out into the movie theaters because, once again, it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to deal with. And there's a lot of people who don't want this topic out there. So once they got it in the movie theaters, it is taking off. And it's a good way for people to be aware of what's actually going on. But what the movie is about is what happens mainly in South America. It's a horrific war that is taking place all over the world. But the one thing it didn't mention, which I kind of wish it would have, was what happens within our own borders, domestically. So let me first read to you our mission statement. I'm going to read it so I can get it right. The mission that we have is that we are a mobilized motorcycle community, and we want to mobilize those within this community and those like-minded. You don't have to be a part of a motorcycle world. You don't have to ride, but those who are of like mind that want to help us fight in the war. We want to mobilize you to help eradicate human sex trafficking and restore those impacted through building awareness, clinical trauma, counseling, job placement, housing assistance, and mentoring. We are local. When I say local, our local chapter in Florida covers what we're called Mid-Florida. So we cover from really Lake City to Lakeland, Clearwater to Cocoa, and all points in between. We will go further if need be. If we got word of somebody in Miami, we would go to Miami. We currently have 14 chapters around the country in 8 states. We have 3 in Canada, and we have 2 affiliates overseas, 1 in Ukraine and 1 in Amsterdam. Each chapter does the work that they do in their area. Mid-Florida is probably the only one that is mobile to go anywhere in the country, which we have, because we're the main body. We're the International Board of Directors and the main chapter. So we will go wherever we have to get somebody away from the trafficker. Some of the things that we want to make you aware of, I would call them the statistics, things that people aren't aware of. So I'm going to read these as well, so bear with me through this. Sex trafficking or trafficking, I'm going to say not just sex trafficking, but trafficking in itself, human trafficking. That could be labor trafficking, sex trafficking, any form of slavery out there generates $150 billion each year. Now, 99 billion of that was for sex trafficking. Human trafficking, and that's once again both labor and sex, is the second largest criminal activity in the world according to the UN and the U.S. Department of State. This statistic is changing, especially on the sex trafficking side. The number one criminal efforts out there is drugs, but if you think about it from a standpoint of consumerism, if I'm a drug dealer and I sell drugs to somebody, I can sell that drug once. It's consumed and it's gone. But as a trafficker will sell someone being trafficked over and over again, multiple times per day, every day of the week for years. And so it's something that they can make more money on, so it's becoming more and more the criminal choice in gangs, in organized crime, in international terrorism. So this is something that people need to understand, that it is becoming more and more prevalent And there's more people today being, or in slavery, should I say, than ever before. And that's even during time of slavery in the U.S. So wrap your head around that one. The average age of first sale of someone is between the ages of 11 and 13. Now, the life expectancy of someone being sold is about 7 years. What happens after 7 years on the average? They die, either by their own hands, by drug addictions, or by their trafficker. This is a statistic that we need to be aware of. There are some that make it beyond that and that can get away from it. But it's more and more of a challenge the longer they're in it, because of the grooming that occurs and how they are conditioned and what their trafficker does to keep them in that life. Most of the people being trafficked don't even make it out of adulthood or make it to adulthood. Now, even with the escort sections of Craigslist and Backpage shut down, which they were done a while back, there's still roughly 150,000 escort ads posted online daily. Now, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime believes that the assumed 1.5 million people who are trafficked in the U.S. at present, 85% of them are U.S. citizens, meaning that they were born and raised here. Most people assume trafficking, like I say, is what happens at the border. It is. Most people assume it's what happens in the seedy parts of town. It is. But the majority of the trafficking is taking place in neighborhoods like your own, and in schools all across the country, in churches, in social settings. Traffic is occurring, and 65% of the people who are being trafficked in the U.S. still live at home. At any given moment, 1 out of 113 people are in danger of being trafficked. The Institute of Medicine and National Research states, well, I just told you that 65% of those being trafficked still live at home, and that many of them have been sexually abused by the age of 6. Now, Florida is number 3 in reported cases in the U.S. for human sex trafficking. I say reported because of the fact that we don't know all the numbers, because not all those being trafficked come forward, especially when it comes to males. Those young boys and men who have been trafficked a lot of times don't come forward because of the stigma they feel will be put on them for the life that they were forced into. So to know the full numbers, to know the extent and the reach of it, we may never know. Now, in Florida, the number one area is the I-4 corridor from Daytona to Tampa. If you think about the tourism business in that area, it brings people from all over. And this is why the sex trade is huge in that area. Now, the number of prostituted children in the U.S. is 26 times the number of players in the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. It's estimated that nearly 300,000 children are trafficked in the U.S. on an annual basis. The next statistic is one that I think that affected me the most. That there's roughly an average 1,262 children that disappear every day in the United States. 50% of trafficking victims are under the age of 16. 1/3 of teens on the streets will be led toward prostitution within 48 hours of leaving home. Now, a pimp can make about $150,000 to $200,000, and that price increases, each year off of one victim. And the average harem, is what they call it, of a particular trafficker is usually somewhere between 4 to 6 victims. So as you can see, it's a money-making business. The chances of getting someone convicted is less than 5% because of the laws and how they require the victims to be able to step forward and testify against their traffickers, and most will not because of the fear of repercussions, death, and things that the trafficker could do to them. Now, more than 70% of child abuse, sex abuse cases involved a relative, a friend, or someone close to the child. So what most people don't understand is that the domestic side of trafficking is much larger than anybody knows. We've seen cases where people are being trafficked by their parents. They're being sold to people of prominence in their neighborhoods, judges, pastors, school teachers, people of wealth, people of stature, politicians, police officers, everyday guys, everyday people. So as far as the type of person you can say is the kind to look for, there really is no model, because everybody out there could be one of those people. 48% of kids who engage in commercial sex said they did it because they didn't have a place to stay. Less than 1% of the world's 21 million victims are ever identified. 4 out of 5 victims, once again of reported cases, are female. And 3 out of 5 child victims saved by law enforcement were from the foster care or group homes. Bikers Against Trafficking is fortunate enough to be involved with an organization here in Florida that works with children in the DCF system. We deal with a large number of them, and those that have been trafficked, our success rate is better because we have a chance to reach them before they've been taken to the point of no return. When they have a chance to meet people who are like them, who have been through what they've been through, it helps them to face what they've been through. So we have seen a better success rate. But when you think about the number of kids in the DCF system who are there because they were trafficked at home or have been trafficked within the DCF system, it was discovered that group homes within the DCF system were targets of traffickers, where they would go after kids because they were not as well monitored and they had easier access to them. So the DCF system is ripe with cases that need to be addressed, something that we are currently trying to do, to work with the different organizations within the DCF system to help these kids out through providing them with counseling, trauma therapy, mentorship. And we have a lot of kids who are in the DCF system that are aging out, and a lot of them don't know or don't have a place to go once they hit 18. A lot of times once they hit 18, the host family stops getting money, and so out they go. Problem with that is if someone's been trafficked in the past and they're back on the streets, they may go back to what they know to survive. So we do what we can to help those who are aging out. We currently have 2 homes and 7 apartments, getting ready to have a 3rd home, that we can place people who have hit 18 because the DCF system in Florida does provide for them schooling, a small stipends, Medicaid until they're 26. So if they can have a place to live, then hopefully we can get them on their feet so they can take off after they graduated from college and live a normal life. One thing that people need to understand is that trafficking goes on everywhere. Every hotel, you'll find that someone's probably been trafficked. What we want from you is to educate yourself. We ask that you go online to bikersagainsttrafficking.org, and there's information on there to educate yourself about what to look for, signs, things that don't look right, and numbers that you can call. The biggest thing we need you to do is, if you see something, is to say something. You may be wrong, but I'd rather have you apologize for making that call than having someone be hurt. I thank you for your time, and if there's any questions that you ever have, please reach out to me. You can find me at earl@bikersagainsttrafficking.org, or you can always call or text me at 386-801-8331. Thanks for listening.